middle-aged woman named Jane who was on her way to her son's baseball game. She had left work later than planned and wanted to make sure she didn't miss a minute of the game. She took off down the road, passing as many people as she could while anxiously tapping her finger on the steering wheel. Every 30 seconds, she would look at the clock again, and with each glance, she could feel her blood pressure rising. After what felt like the 100th red light she hit, she pulled up behind an excruciatingly slow driver. Of course, this was a one-lane road. She couldn't take it anymore. She laid on the car horn and she rolled down her window and yelled some choice words at the driver in front of her. Just then, she saw the flashing lights behind her. She pulled over and the officer was quickly at her driver's side door. "Please step out of the vehicle." She did as instructed, and before long, Jane was handcuffed and put in the back of the police vehicle. After what felt like an eternity, the officer opened the back door and told her she was free to go. "What in the world is going on?" asked Jane. The officer answered, "Well, you see, I noticed your strange driving and how you were aggressively honking and yelling at the car in front of you. Then I saw the 'What would Jesus do?' and 'Follow me to church' and the bronze fish bumper stickers and thought the vehicle must have been stolen." Jesus' life was marked by the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And we as his followers are called to bear the same fruit as we stay connected to him. Did this woman in the story, whose car indicated that she was a Jesus follower, display the fruit of the Spirit by her actions? No. And the officer noted that distinction. Does your life display patience even in the hurry of life? Does stress get the best of you? Our key question for this week is, how does God provide the help I need to deal with stress? Stress. Who has felt stress in the last month, in the last week, in the last 24 hours? Stress and the physical and mental ramifications of stress are a huge problem in our society. 75% of adults describe symptoms of stress, such as headaches, tiredness, and sleeping problems. 49% of adults said that stress negatively affects their behavior. This looks like easily losing their temper, snapping at loved ones, or over-drinking, and so much more. So are we doomed to live lives of stress? This leads to our key idea. I am slow to anger and endure patiently under the unavoidable pressures of life. I don't know about you, but I want to be able to state this key idea confidently. Proverbs 14:29 offers us such insight. Whoever is patient has great understanding, but the one who is quick-tempered displays folly. Although I am sure each of us would agree with this and say that patience is something we want to mark our lives, it can be so much easier said than done. There is a story in the Old Testament where David had every reason to lose his patience, but he chose differently. Check this out.
There was a young man named David who first worked in the king's courts as a musician and then became a successful soldier and military leader. David was so successful that he grew in popularity among the Israelites. Israel's first king, Saul, became so jealous of David's popularity that for several years he tried to capture and kill him, even though Saul's son was David's best friend. David became a fugitive, fleeing Israel to hide from Saul. Saul took 3,000 men from Israel to hunt down David. During their search, Saul came upon a cave and went inside to relieve himself. Little did he know that David and his men were hiding inside the cave. David's men encouraged David to sneak up on Saul and kill him. So David crept up to Saul, unnoticed, and cut off a corner of his robe. But David immediately felt guilty for what he did. He still honored the fact that God had chosen Saul to be king. He went back to his men in the cave and told them not to harm Saul. Saul left the cave, not realizing what had happened. David followed Saul out of the cave and called out, "My lord, the king!" As Saul turned around, David bowed down, his face to the ground. David said to Saul, "Why do you listen when men say, 'David is bent on harming you'? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, 'I will not lay my hand on my Lord,' because he is the Lord's anointed." David showed Saul the piece of robe he had cut off, proving that he had had the chance to kill him, but did not. Saul began weeping. "You are more righteous than I," he said. "You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants or wipe out my name from my father's family." David gave his oath to Saul. Then Saul and his men left David and his men unharmed. Once he returned home, however, Saul's jealousy began to grow once more. So he set out again to find David. This time, Saul and his men set up camp not far from where David and his men were hiding. While Saul and his men slept at night, David and one of his men approached the camp. When they saw Saul's spear stuck in the ground near his head as he slept, David's servant pleaded with David to let him sneak into the camp and use Saul's own spear to kill him. But once again, David refused to kill Saul. "The Lord himself will strike him," David said. "Or his time will come and he will die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay hand on the Lord's anointed." Instead, David and his servant snuck into the camp and stole the spear and a jug of water to prove that David had yet another chance to kill Saul, but did not. When Saul realized what happened, he and his men determined to leave David alone, unharmed. David once again showed great patience, trusting that his future was in God's hands.
David was anointed as king roughly 16 years before this episode we just watched, and knew that God's plan was for him to be king. Yet he didn't force his way to the throne. He waited patiently for God's timing and plan to work itself out. Why does God call us to have patience and perseverance through stress and hardship? James, the brother of Jesus, writes in James 1:2-4, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything." We have all faced times in our lives when God has told us, not yet. Maybe you are living in such a time right now. This period of waiting is not for nothing. It can be that God is preparing you still for what is next, or he is working to build your faith and perseverance. We don't always know the why behind our waiting, but what we can know is that God is still faithful through it all. Before you begin your discussion, I would like to leave you with 3 key applications. The first one, trust God's timing, his ways, and his outcomes. 2, don't let unimportant stuff bother you so much. Try to keep an eternal perspective. And 3, offer the patience today that you would like to receive tomorrow. Show others the same patience as you would like them to show you. There is no easy path to a more spirit-filled life. But God tells us that He will finish what He started, and He will continue to grow the fruit of patience in your life as you cooperate with Him. God bless and have a good week.